I'm first going to bring this back to normal to right myself in the world, and that is Arthas. But what I actually meant to do was come into my profile here. So I I I compete in NGS Division C, but I have subbed for Division A teams and had A teams ban my Garrosh. And the now that I've been reframed by the previous discussion, I'm gonna probably change a few things on how I talk about our wins today for learning Garrosh, but the the main points that I want to go over are I'm going to talk about my different builds as Garrosh. I'm going to talk about different combos that you can pull off with Garrosh. We're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses, counters both ways, and we're also going to practice some basics in try mode. So at some point, I'm going to have you all load up your game, load up try mode, and just like I am currently broadcasting to Discord, I want you to then broadcast to Discord, and we're going to go over that exercise. But to dive a little bit into Valk here, if you look, and so this is straight ranked play, but I'm going to add in everything except ARAM. If you look back to the, let's see, Garrosh, when did you start? Okay. So this season right here is the beginning of Garrosh. All my games, I split them, not a big sample size. I then tank on Garrosh for a very long time, to the point that one of my coaches said, you should probably just stop playing this hero. And so you could see my win-loss on Garrosh was not great for a very long time. Here is when it finally clicked for me. At this point, I hit level 38 as Garrosh. And so it took me a long time to learn him and to apply him until now. If we come to this season, I have a 65% win rate with Garrosh, and most of those being in Storm League play. In NGS last season, I was the only undefeated Garrosh in my division. I played him 4 times and had him banned 17 times against me. So I don't think Garrosh is the perfect tank for every situation, but I definitely think that by putting in the time and learning some of these basics, you can have a lot of fun with Garrosh. You can feel very impactful with Garrosh, and if it comes to coordinated play, you can get people to focus on you in the draft, which then allows your damage dealers to pick their carries, if you will. And there's other tanks that you can be wall tanks with. So there to step back on tanks for a second, and of course everyone, as we're going through this, please feel free to interrupt me with questions. I tend to get very ramped up and into my own monologue. That doesn't mean that you can't interrupt it. I would rather you interrupt it because I think that's better for everyone. So
I got a question.
sure.
What if you only want to play Garrosh and nothing else?
Then you should probably avoid coordinated play, because they'll eventually be smart enough to ban it against you, and then you won't know what to do. However, in Storm League, you'll probably be able to go nuts. However, the person asking that question is a master or grandmaster player, so I'm thinking they probably have enough other stuff in their kit. My personal highest rank has been Diamond 3. I hit that a couple of seasons ago. While I liked the changes of the medallion, apparently it was not a good thing for me. This says I was Diamond 5. I ended the season at Plat 5. I had a rough go with those. Even only 13 Delta change here, it was not a great season for me. But any other questions? Because I feel like Alpharak may have been teasing me. Okay. So there's different types of tanks. Your wall tanks, if you will, are ones that I apparently tend to play a lot. All three of these would be examples of wall tanks. Your dive tanks, training. Let's go busy. Your dive tanks are going to be people like Muradin and Diablo. Your ability to zone with a wall tank is far greater than with a dive tank, and that's just two examples of tanks, but Garrosh does not have a way to jump at the enemy. Yes, he has displacement. Yes, he's very scary. He does not have a way to dive in like Diablo, like Anubarak, like Varian, Taunt, like Muradin, like ETC. His best engage is mounting up, waiting in a bush, and surprising somebody when they overstep. So to jump in here, you're going to see me use the collection quite a bit today to get into try mode when you're in the different segments with me. If you didn't see that, you go collection, heroes, in this case tanks, and find the hero, and I'm going to go into try mode. I've loaded 3 different builds that we're going to talk about today, and again, as anybody has questions, let me know. We will get to the point where I, again, want you to load up the game if you're able, go into try mode, and we're going to talk about the combo. So, right now, we're going to turn off minions, we're going to turn off the allied hero, and we're going to turn off the enemy hero. Okay, so the different builds, and we'll go through this, and Lupus is my co-trainer. He is a GM player that also enjoys playing Garrosh, so he will have some great insights as well. But these are my 3 builds that I'm going to go over. The first one, and you'll see me telegraph this, unfortunately at level 1, you'll probably know what Valk is doing. Yes, I can change, but I tend to stay in these different lanes. So body check is my pick at level 1 if I'm going into my taunt build typically. So I go body check, I go Indomitable, which is my unstoppable, I go into the fray, which is my save for allied heroes, I go Warlord's Challenge, I really like Blood Craze in this scenario, and then Seasoned Soldier, and finally Inner Rage. What that builds for me, and I will always rearrange them like that. What that builds for me is if I get a hold of someone, I can early game reduce their healing by 30%. Late game, I can reduce their healing with Inner Rage by 75%. And I have now 2 charges of it. The Unstoppable, if depending on your rank and depending on your playstyle, in coordinated play, and the Unstoppable from Indomitable feels absolutely necessary. In Storm League, particularly in the lower ranks of the ladder, you can get away with not taking Indomitable because people probably aren't going to kill you anyway because they're going to say, don't focus the tank. The level 7 Into the Fray gives me not only an engage for my team, but also a save for my team. So I have had times where I have killed an enemy player by throwing a siege camp on top of their head. I have killed the enemy player by throwing one of my allies to chase them down. I have saved my ally from, I can remember one case where I hit my Indomitable and I Into the Frayed Ariel out of a Gravo bomb, and so the Gazlo combo became useless in that scenario. I should pause for a second. I'm not going to go over every single talent. I will go over my builds and I'll explain them why. If we want to go through every single talent, we can. I just worry we're not going to have time today. So Warlord's Challenge is your area taunt. It's one of the things that Garrosh is absolutely known for, and a lot of people will expect him to take that. Blood Craze, because I'm not taking the level 1 Q quest, I don't take defensive measures as well, though armor and shields do stack fantastically well. But the additional heal when I'm smacking an enemy hero is fantastic. At level 16, gaining an additional charge of Blood Craze, or Bloodthirst down here, now means that if I'm hitting heroes, I will get 40% of my missing health and 30% of my maximum health over that time. And then finally, Inner Rage being the capstone that we already talked about, giving that 75 healing. My next build to reset talents, this one I go into Decimate and Deadly Calm with. So everybody screams about how Johanna is the best wave clear tank. The math of Johanna is that her condemn, or not her, her condemn, will do 165 damage to minions. The math of Garrosh's equivalent, which is Unrivaled Strength, will do 204 damage. Now, your tank shouldn't usually be your wave clear, and we're going to talk about that, but there are times where now you can participate to that. I like Unrivaled Strength more than Warbreaker because the damage comes online right out of the chute, even though the damage of Warbreaker is better overall in team fights. And the damage of Unrivaled Strength works on monsters, minions, structures, everything, where Warbreaker is only heroes. So there, and that we'll talk about that more as we get into the third build. But Unrivaled Strength, again, Indomitable, into the fray. Now I go Decimate, again, my two favorites, and finally Deadly Calm. So I like Decimate into Deadly Calm. I liked it before they buffed it, but now that it does 40% less damage, it's crazy how that works well with them doing less damage and you having armor and taking less damage while having the additional healing twice. So there's a lot of synergies in the builds that I've described, and we'll go through the combos with them as well. But now to go into the third build, this one is probably the more meta of the three, though I really like the first two and I don't play this one as much. But Groundbreaker, Indomitable, again into the fray, Warlord's Challenge, Defensive Measures, Mortal Combo, and then Titanic Might. So Titanic Might at level 20 does allow you to not just throw one, hope I don't have cooldowns, but now you'll see where it's on both. And so you can pull off this combo where with Mortal Combo at 16 reducing your Wrecking Ball cooldown and Titanic Might at 20 allowing you to throw two, you can throw two and slam them and instantly have Mortal Combo back up. And because of the cooldown reduction at level 1, complete quests, you now have where your Groundbreaker, instead of being on 8 seconds, is now on 6 seconds. And so you can run in, toss, boom, toss again. This one's, oh, I've got toggle cooldowns off. That's my problem there. All right. Slam, this one's reset. So you've got all sorts of things you can do with that. Okay, so those are my three different builds. When am I going to use each of them? It's going to depend on the heroes on the opposite side of the floor. So everyone wants to say, oh, you got to have taunt to stop some mobility heroes. Most mobility heroes also don't know what to do with Decimate. So it's going to depend on the hero. If I've got someone like Genji, for example, I don't really like to use Warlord's Challenge against instead of Decimate against Genji, because most Genjis are just trying to bait it out as they dash away. But with the slow and the reduced damage of Decimate into Deadly Calm, Genjis don't really know what to do with that because they're so used to just having their dash be everything. So now they're slow in that point. Their dash is on cooldown. They thought they were going to be able to stay mobile while they were working or while they're doing damage, and it's not working for them. So any questions as far as the three builds? And I'm also going to pick Lupus's brain as far as his thoughts quick.
Is there any that you think is stronger late game? I found when I play a lot of Garrosh that he becomes worse and worse as the game goes on. Is there any you think that has more staying power, like having that Deadly Calm at 20? Or
Deadly Calm is massive at level 20, and I would say Inner Rage is also. Let's see. Because being able to reduce by 75 healing on a target that you choose. You can miss an Ana Grenade, you can miss a Zool Scythe, you cannot miss Inner Rage Body Check. It is point and click. So that absolutely has the ability to to end a late game team fight in your favor, Decimate into Deadly Calm, I find is just nutty in late game team fights. I had a Dragonshire with a Samuro that, because he took the beefed up clones, all he was doing was giving me resets to Deadly Calm, because Decimate will have a lowered cooldown for 1 second per enemy hero you hit. So with Samuro having 2 clones, there were 7 enemies on the board. I got off something like 6 or 7 successive Decimates, reduced everyone's damage, and at level 20, let's see, let's reset talents.
Choose a talent. Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
So at level 20, I'm hitting for 110, doubling that, and I was hitting 7 people, so I was doing 210 or 220 damage 7 times over. So now I'm doing somewhere in the realm of let's see, what, 1500 damage every second as I'm swinging this, and then 6 or 7 swings, and so I pumped out stupid damage, and I will often keep up with assassins when I've got Decimate. With Warlord's Challenge, it's more about your team's follow-up, but it's also more feast or famine to me. So I'm a huge proponent of Decimate over Warlord's Challenge, but I've been playing a lot of body check into Warlord's Challenge lately. Did that answer your question there?
It
MB?
did.
So
Yep, thanks.
I think Decimate, you're almost playing for the longer game, where Warlord's Challenge, you do have the concerns of Garrosh feeling like he drops off after level 16 a bit. I think the idea of Death Wish is cool, but you have a 2.5 second window that if your team doesn't kill the person, your level 20 didn't do anything. And level 20s are supposed to be amazing. You know, no one looks at Uther's Divine Bulwark with up to 7 shields going off instantly and says, oh yeah, that's perfectly fair and balanced. Level 20s are supposed to wreck the game. You need to end before level 20. But with Deadly Calm hitting people, the damage reduction can be a big deal. Lupus, any thoughts on builds quick?
So the one I've played the most is that third one that you showed with the Q in Dom. Yeah, that one. And it's definitely the one I'm most comfortable on. I think that the late game power of Titanic Might is pretty good, but I definitely agree with the sentiment that he falls off late. Although Deadly Calm is really good, but I think the Decimate at 10 is somewhat underwhelming most of the time.
Yeah,
It's not inherently bad, but
for me, the Decimate, the Deadly Calm's the big win, right? For me, Decimate at 10 is I have a little bit more threat range. And to show everybody what I mean by that, so you can see if I'm holding this, the inner circle is where I exist to throw someone, and I'm pointing at my screen with my hand like that matters, but I can't move my mouse, otherwise I lose these cursors. So you can see my green circle is my person. The first 2 yellow circles are I cannot throw someone outside the second yellow circle. The third yellow circle is my throw range. Now on this I am Unrivaled Strength, which increased that throw range by 25%. And here with Decimate, or with Groundbreaker, excuse me, you can see my threat range here. The problem is the inner portion of this triangle is only damage. It's not going to catch anybody. It's just that sliver along the top portion. Oh, I don't want my map to be off there. It's just that edge portion of it that actually stuns and slows them. And then of course this is melee range. Decimate gives me a little bit less range then Groundbreaker, but it now means that this whole circle I can slow by 40%. If I have my Decimate and my Indomitable, no one can get away from me unless they've got a save. So if they were using something like Johanna Ironskin, if they had Anduin to pull them out, if they had an Unstoppable from Rhaegar, those things they can get away. If they have a blink like Tracer or a dash away ability, they can get out. But most heroes can't. And so it's about increasing that threat radius. The damage isn't that spectacular at 10. You're likely not going to kill someone just off of that. But being able to grab them and execute your combo is one of the reasons that I really like Decimate. So, but yeah, Decimate is building into a late game. If you're on a map like, say, Braxis, and it's probably going to be an earlier game fight, you want to take that early fight also with Warlord's Challenge, because if you can just absolutely make sure someone gets deleted, now your team can get that advantage on a very snowbally map.
I have a question.
Sure.
So in my experience, it seems as though the kind of game plan for Garrosh is to isolate somebody by throwing them in and stunning them, and then if you need to, you have taunt, and then after you isolate the person, you want to try to zone the enemy team from saving them while your team kills them, right? So assuming your DPS is there, they're most likely going to die. And taking Seasoned Soldier, I've found, has helped me with the zoning the enemy team off, because I can take more of a beating before I need to leave. How, like, I'm curious where the value in Mortal Combo is as far as like achieving the goal of Garrosh.
So with
Like,
that,
if you throw somebody in, like, do you need to throw them again?
no, but you can throw their team away from saving them.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting idea. That makes sense.
And that's what lets you at the 20. You can actually throw 3 times with the Mortal
Yeah.
Combo into Titanic Might. So it's actually just like a really long chain stun if you get all of those.
Come on.
Wait, how do you do the third throw?
Now
It's like kind of an unintended interaction, but it does work.
I get why I messed it up, and that was I didn't have Mortal Combo or Titanic Might. Okay, so
Yeah.
because you've got 2 here, I can toss both and slam them both. This instantly comes up. Because it just, when they reworked Mortal Combo to go either direction, it at one point it had to be that you had to slam them and then toss them. And now you can go either way. You can toss them, then slam them. You can slam them, then toss them. It doesn't matter. It just has to be within 3 seconds. And so, because I've done this and slammed them, I'm executing that again. You'll see.
Oh, okay. So basically, the 1Q procs twice on
It
the
procs
first
the
throws.
talent 2 times.
Okay,
yes.
interesting.
And so, all
I
before
see.
the
Neat.
cooldown. So that can be pretty mean. I can remember a particular game on Infernal Shrines where I thought we were dead to rights under the bottom keep, and they came charging at us, and I tossed their tank, who I believe was Johanna, back on their team, which then slowed everybody on the team, and I walked away with like 5% health, and my team was just like, oh my goodness. And after the game, the enemy tank said that I won that game. Like, the team beat us, but you beat us. So the combo's still up, but if I waited, it didn't go. Any other
Interesting.
questions, quick, before we jump into the different combos?
Choose a talent. Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
So do you think that, like, I've always resisted that talent just because I feel like it's hard to get value out of throwing 2 targets, just because if people are playing against Garrosh well, like, they won't get close to me, like, late game.
So
Like, they won't,
most of the time
Okay.
with Garrosh, you only have 2 choices at level 20. The only way you can get a third choice is if you took body check at level 1. And if you're taking taunt, your taunt upgrade to me isn't worthwhile. When they have it increase the Warlord's challenge duration to 3 seconds or 3.5 seconds, then I think it's going to be busted. But right now, again, it's a 2.5 second window, which if you're super coordinated, your team can kill someone in that 2.5 second window, and it's fantastic. But a lot of times, the person dies like right after the taunt's cooldown has ended, at which point you don't get the reset. And so there's cooler reset level 20s. Unleashed from Greymane, for example, is a cooler reset than Deathwish.
So basically, you suggest Titanic Might because Deathwish is not that strong.
Yeah. And Titanic Might means, here we'll add minions.
Yeah, it's also useful in the use case where
Oh, I don't want Alarak, I wanted Arthas.
if someone is hugging one of their allied, I guess, characters, then it gives you more leeway for the throw.
Right, so now I've got 2, so it's like, oh yeah, you thought you were going to eat the throw and save your teammate, but now both of you are over there. And the bot's dumb, but even if he was, like, the bot will always hug my minions, but come on, Arthas. Oh, my cooldown's not up, so my ability didn't fire. And so it also gives a little bit more threat that way. For me, when you have Unrivaled Strength and Titanic Might, Unrivaled Strength being the range and damage at 1, you can surprise some people with the damage. So right now, I'm doing 200 damage. If I increase that by 125%, I'm now doing 450 damage. If I throw 2 targets, I'm now doing 900 damage. And I'm probably going to slam them as well, which means I now just did 1078 damage from the tank roll before I meleeed the enemy team. And while it's not such huge damage that it's going to be that I soloed somebody, it is enough damage that it might be the difference between that person dying or not.
I don't know if this is really obvious to everyone else, but I just realized that the little indicator, horde indicator that appears on people, means that they're in throw range and that they're the target that's going to be thrown.
Yes. Blue for your allies, red for your enemies. It's the only blue horde logo I can ever remember. But yeah, you can absolutely... because I'm hitting W. You can absolutely use that for damage, and I've done it.
One more talent question.
Sure.
So what's the allied throw? In what situations do you take a different talent there? Like, I've taken Oppressor when I'm facing like a Mephisto, I found, but is there any situations that you take the attack speed or the spell power?
I almost always take Into the Fray because it's an extra save. That being said, if you already have that save on your team, say you have Rhaegar in the heal position and you're not going to need it, Oppressor against somebody like Illidan, Orphea, Mephisto basically means they don't get to kill you or anyone you're standing by. And Oppressor does stack with Deadly Calm. So you have your armor, Oppressor, and Deadly Calm. Somebody trying to hit you with big abilities, say an Alarak, you don't care. Because you've reduced their spell power by 40, their overall damage by 40, and whatever your armor is at that point. So mainly when you see me take Oppressor, it means that whatever tournament we're playing in has banned Into the Fray for throwing turrets.
Or, the multiple other things you've been able to randomly throw, like the Samurai on Hanamura.
Yeah, I mean...
Molten Core. the boss,
The payload itself at one
the
point.
payload. Yes.
I mean, I
Although I
think
think
it's just a feature.
finally fixed. So
It's just
yeah.
a feature to me. Garrosh is big enough that he should be able to come up and throw the boss.
I agree.
Sadly, no Horde logo here. I mean, he's been taking his protein shakes, going to the gym, obviously, but he can't throw the boss. I think being able to throw the Triglav or the Dragon Knight would be pretty funny, but yeah, that bug pops up quite a bit. But if your team already has the save and they're not reliant on you to provide it, Oppressor's huge. Intimidation sounds great against somebody like a Butcher or even an Illidan, but I don't know that I would worry about that in that case. I would rather save the ally that Butcher just slammed than reduce Butcher's attack speed. Any other talent questions? Okay. I'm going to quickly go into the explanation of the different combos and try to get through strengths and weaknesses and get us the last, call it 5 to 8 minutes that we can get into try mode and practice the combos together. So, all right. So we've talked about the enemy tank approaches, you toss them back and you slam their backline. The enemy tank slowed, the backline slowed, and all good things. You want to practice that combo over and over again here in try mode. You want to just be able to every time toss and slam. Now, back to the beginning of the lesson. I was a terrible Garrosh until level 38. I loved the hero. I thought it was a cool kit. I was so ineffective. Do not beat yourself up because you don't get this on day one. But if out of this, you can walk into the next game you play Garrosh and say, I can get this combo, and you can get that super consistently, then that's a win. And you'll eventually learn the cheeky things like, if I take Unrivaled Strength on Towers of Doom, and we have a fight over the bottom sapper camp, either one, I can either throw an enemy player into my base to die, or I can throw an enemy player into their base and I've effectively Stitches gorged a player and they're out of the fight and we kill the other people that are there. You'll learn those things, but for today, if it's just learning the basics of the combo, that's fine. Now, since we're in the Decimate, or not the Decimate, the Warlord's Challenge combo right now, you don't have to wait for them to hit the ground in order to taunt them. He's taunted because I taunted him while he was midair. The range of taunt was not as far as I threw him. But because I taunted them while they were still in the air, they land taunted, and your team can start fighting.
I will say that's a sorry to interrupt.
No, you're
that's
good.
a super effective, because normally we'd think Johanna is really good against Garrosh, but once you get the 10 and you can taunt her in the air, you can't press trade if she's taunted. So if you throw taunt her over into your team, she can still die really fast.
Yeah.
It doesn't get to press anything.
I also really love Decimate against Johanna, and maybe this is a lower level strat, if you will, and this is going to sound a little mean, but most Johanna players are stupid. They think that they're always safe against Garrosh, and you can condition a player through the course of a match by constantly throwing them at their team instead, that by the time you hit level 10 with Decimate, they will approach you with their shield. At which point, your team will drop the shield and they can't run away because your Decimate range is more than they can handle. But to go with the minions really quick, the wave clear combo of Garrosh in any of his standard builds, which is not typically easy, is you want to take one of the front minions and you want to toss them on the back, you slam everything, and you start meleeing the back minions. the front minions will die to yours, and you move to the next lane. Can Garrosh double soak? Sure he can. It just sucks. Pick a different hero. But if you're in a scenario where your team has stuck you in that point, you're going to do the best that you can. If you are a solo Garrosh or a double soak Garrosh, what I would recommend to you there is Unrivaled Strength in for the kill. With in for the kill, you'll eventually scale to the point where you do a single auto and a single W, and it will wipe the minion. Garrosh is unknown to most, but he's a fantastic shrine clear on Infernal Shrines. But you should be picking other heroes because that's not the tank's job. This is Garrosh in his natural habitat. He's on a horse, he's in the bush, he's waiting for the enemy hero, and he's going to come up and slam him. And so those are the basic combos for Garrosh. You saw the wave clear combo where we toss the front minion into the back, and then we walk up and melee everything. The basic toss combo is going to be to slam him like that. And so you walk up to him, and you can see I play with locked camera, but as soon as you have this on him, you move your mouse to where you want to go, and you just hit both buttons. EQ, EQ, EQ. And by doing that, when they land, you will slam them. That's just the activation time. You create that macro. I have had times where I'm playing Garrosh and I'm clearing the wave, and because I've done the EQW combo so many times, like they all are on cooldown, and I don't remember having hit them. To reset talents here,
Choose a talent.
go back into this one.
Choose a talent. Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
So again, we talked about here, okay, having the additional threat range. So now you'll see the purple swirls go on them, and you know that person is now slowed by 40%, and you get them ready to die to your team. It works particularly well against wall tanks, because they think, oh, he can't catch up to me, we both walk the same speed. Well, not anymore. Okay, so that'd be the different combos. As far as strengths and weaknesses, Garrosh is somewhat weak to heroes that can either constantly slow him or keep him poked down. So I really don't like things like Jaina that's playing particularly well, or a Hanzo that can constantly poke me. Jaina, I'm gonna get her eventually. You know, we're gonna repeat the end of Cataclysm into Miss of Pandaria and whatnot. We're gonna be fine. But at the early part of the game, a Jaina player can be an absolute nuisance because I'm just so slow. So I have to approach her from the corners. I don't think I have anybody from CCS 2 in here, but there's one hero that I usually will not pick Garrosh with if that character is still on the board or on the enemy team. And for me, that is ETC. ETC is extremely frustrating to Garrosh. He is constantly booping you back, and even though he can be a dive tank, he often plays like a wall tank, and he'll just use his loudspeakers to knock you back. And so it's particularly frustrating in that moment. It's not that you can't beat an ETC, but it's not that you have a clear advantage. For me, if I'm going against a Muradin or a Johanna, I feel like I have a clear advantage in that case, because the Muradin is going to think, oh, I pop Avatar and I'm safe. All right, well, Avatar doesn't mean squat if I'm going to toss you, taunt you, body check you, and my team has something that's just going to burst you down. We don't care, because you're not going to get off your jump in time, because we're just going to blast you. And same thing with Johannas. They think, oh, I'm just going to magically be safe because I have Iron Skin. Well, that's not really the case. But ranged poke that is particularly difficult or long range, for example, Chromie, Hanzo, even Sergeant Hammer, just because of how much range she can get, can be difficult for Garrosh. Heroes that I think Garrosh can be very strong against would be stuff like Kerrigan, Arthas. If they get too close, I just make it even worse. Diablo is one that I feel like Garrosh is a good counter against. So, any questions, strengths, weaknesses? Avoid poke if you can, even though your armor helps quite a bit.
One thing I feel like I have trouble with as Garrosh is that I'll get the throw, we'll get the kill, but like my cooldowns are kind of down for a bit after throw Q combo. And so the enemy team, especially I had a game with like a Sonya where they just walked into my team afterwards and wiped us. So is there like, I think, do we want like good disengage, I felt like, with Garrosh, where like if that combo lands and you get the kill, but your cooldowns are all down, do you need that disengage to get out, or what do you think about that?
It depends on the other heroes, of course, but say for example, if you had a Stukov that could silence her or a Kael'thas that could stun her, I'm not as worried. If we've blown all those cooldowns, we just make sure we back up. If she's a leap Sonya that we're worried is going to jump on our mage, we make sure that we take something like Mortal Combo, because then when she jumps in, we toss her back out. We make sure that we take things like Into the Fray and we can save that mage from it. But it, particularly in the late game, if you get a kill and that person's dead for 45 to 65 seconds, okay, I can back up for 10 to 12 seconds and let everybody's cooldowns go in. Because if the team counter engages me that much and we run just as fast as they run, but we're up one person, we may be able to get something done there. But we can also just run and wait for cooldowns and let them burn everything trying to catch us, and then re-engage. Any other questions? I'll get the message in a few, buddy. Thank you, though. You can keep the phone for a minute. That'd be little Valk bringing me a message. Okay, at this point is where I would say let's get into try mode, and then I don't think you even necessarily have to go past level 1, because if you want to get to level 10 and practice things like the Decimate combo, that's fine. Or not the Decimate combo, but the Taunt in the Air combo, that's fine as well. But just go in, toggle off minions, toggle off allied hero, toggle off enemy hero. The reason you want to do that is because sometimes Arthas will just wander down here looking for you and interrupt your cooldowns. Okay. I'm gonna scroll down.
I had a quick theory crafting question, Valk.
Sure.
Do you ever throw a minion from a camp to stop the camp from being cleared?
So
for example,
but it usually feels like it backfires on me. You're saying to toss them into there or something?
Yeah. Like this is originally something that seemed to make sense to me with Stitches, where he could Q and just grab one of the Bruiser minions on Tomb of Spider Queen, for example, and then it would take a long time for it to walk back.
So the
So
difficult
presumably,
portion there is now I'm here and I just use that, and my enemies are probably facing me. Does that make sense?
yes.
And so
I agree I would guess.
So I don't know that I would do that too often with Garrosh. Could I see it being an amazing play on the highlight reel? Absolutely. Is it something that I would recommend that you try to do consistently? No, I like the Stitches version because Stitches is safe.
Mm-hmm.
And Stitches can walk around, and by the time he walks around, his team could probably get there, and now it's a scuffle we want. Okay.
Another oh sorry.
Yeah.
To go on the back of that a little bit. I would assume that the primary use case for that would be like, say someone on your team is dead and the other team's going to come steal your camp, and I think that's like, it's kind of okay if you can get away with it and deny them the camp with that. But if it's straight up like early game, Garrosh is like, you're not going to take a camp away from a Garrosh, and he's also probably the best early game like camp invade tank because of kind of the reasons we talked about. Valk mentioned it earlier, like the Towers of Doom one, you can just effectively remove someone from the fight by throwing them into their base.
Yeah.
Or if they invade you, you can throw them into your base.
We had that happen last night where I tossed a Diablo into his own base, and because he had already used his diabolical charge, he couldn't rejoin the fight. And so now it was a 3v4 in our favor, and we just went ham on the other three. We stole the camp, they ran away crying. I think we killed one or two. But yeah, it's
The use case I was imagining with Garrosh is in the early game is something like you run in by yourself to their camp. Let's say it's Sky Temple, and you they have their DPS and their healer on the camp, but you're by yourself, and you just want to delay the camp enough for your team to finish theirs and then come invade. And supposing that you're afraid to stay on the point, so it is kind of an edge case
out in that scenario, because the healer won't kill you, the DPS might, and so if you just toss the DPS player, so on Sky Temple, say are you saying Bruiser or Siege? Because we can look at either.
Siege, yeah, I guess.
So Siege.
I guess throwing DPS is a faster way to do it, especially if no one can.
If you throw the DPS and say you're in their area, there is a little corner on Sky Temple in between the Siege camp, the bottom temple, and the boss area. There's a little corner with a single bush, and you can toss them into that corner, and they won't be able to re-engage unless they have something like Greymane's Dark Flight to get back over the wall. And now they either risk walking up into the boss pit, which is where your allies are coming from, or they go back through their base, and now they've wasted that time, and by that time your allies are there. So I would still recommend in either of those cases to throw the DPS back into lane, because you don't want to just throw him up towards the rock with the wide bush. You want to throw him towards the bottom lane, because the rock with the wide bush, they'll just walk back in on you. The boss pit single bush, they're just going to walk back into you. But if you can throw them into that little corner by the boss lane that has that single bush, and I can bring up the map and show that also, but if we can do that, then they are not going to be able to re-engage if you're thinking your team is that close.
Yeah, thank you. I'm updating that. This only makes sense with stitches.
Yeah, because like Artanis, if you swap out an enemy player, now Artanis is there ready to die. If you swapped him into your base, you're a god. If you swapped him into nothing, then you die and they walk away and everyone says, why did you do that?
Oh, one last thing. If you pick Unrivaled Strength at 1, the combo on 16 seems harder to execute, because sometimes their character models will squish together and separate on a straight line, like on a straight radius away from you.
You're saying Unrivaled Strength into Mortal Combo and Titanic Might.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, when I take again, you can look at Valks, and I'm very telegraphed usually on which lane I've chosen build-wise, and I tend to stay in that lane. And so for me, Mortal Combo and Titanic Strength go with my defensive measures and Warbreaker talent line.
Got it.
Where if you see me take Unrivaled Strength, I'm going Decimate Deadly Calm. It's not 100%, but it's darn near that I'm taking those. If you see me take Body Check at 1, you know I'm going Taunt Inner Rage. If you see me take Warbringer, I'm going Defensive Measures, Mortal Combo, Titanic Might. And that it's not that the game is always that linear, but that's just, I tend to stay in that lane. But the combo that I want everyone to practice, because we're wrapping up here time-wise, and I know we've got another segment that starts here in about 5 minutes, is I want you to practice that, and then if you feel that you've accomplished that well enough, I then want you to practice the toss with taunt in the air. And if you feel like going then even farther with it, I want you to practice the taunt in the air, slam them, and then you also want to body check them, though my body check is on the wrong part here for me. Oh, I moved too far there, but I don't, if they're taunted and there's some sort of movement reduction CC, I don't need to hit Groundbreaker right away. If there's not, they're going to walk toward me. And so then you'll want to taunt them and slam basically right out of the gate, because you're going to slow them to keep them towards your team. When they're taunting, they are forcing them to attack you. They will walk towards you. And so if you hold this, a normal hero is going to have moved towards you during that time. And this is the bigger slow. And especially I take the additional duration here. But you want to just get to where you, every time. And the nice thing about try mode is now you can accomplish what would normally take you several games worth of tosses to get down. You can now practice this combo 100 times in 10 minutes, easy. Oh, my talents had not come back yet. Any questions before we cut y'all loose to your next class? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I do know that we've got a tank Q&A that starts up next with Dwarf and Lupus, and also a how to handle stealth, backline harass, and globals with Rock and Key. And if anybody is unaware of the schedule or the sign-up sheet, you can check that out in the announcements channel of the CCS Discord, and there's a link for that. We do still have some spots open in later groups for not just the discussions like this, but also there's some play spots open at the 8 o'clock Eastern hour for both the Bronze Silver customs and the Gold Plat customs. So if anybody is interested in jumping in on those, please do so. Spread the word. Hey, we just won the game. Go Minions.
Thanks, Falk.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Buckner.